And this is really cool. I'm looking forward to doing this. I had the pleasure to be the editor of a book recently by my friend Nick Katowski, and it's called The Darkest Corner of His Mind. And it's like a 1800s Victorian cloak and dagger kind of thing, but with a little, modern slasher movie thrown in. Anyway, so it takes place in a quasi-England. It's not exactly England, but let's give it my best shot. All right. Chapter 3, Feelings, Nothing More Than Feelings. Reveling in the aftermath of my latest murder, I was afloat in the clouds. The fresh scent of blood on my hands felt invigorating. The moment seemed so perfect, so right. Yet I could not shake off one nagging feeling, and soon the warmth in my heart began to turn cold, and a shiver ran across my body. I struggled to block out these warning signals. I closed my eyes and smiled, and tried instead to review the amazing events of this night. I hadn't killed anyone in months. For some reason, I just felt I needed this one. I hadn't planned this slaughter through. It just came together fortuitously. I could make up some fancy reason for why I had done it, as in, her hair was a chestnut, the color of coffins. But the truth is simpler. I killed her because I needed to. Moreover, it was the right thing to do. Murder has never unsettled me. Au contraire, it is the bravest feat anyone can do to take another person's life, to play that role of God. I am the decider of who shall die, or more precisely, I get to decide how to help them die. And that is a noble and weighty deed. I've always loved making these grave decisions about which persons shall die. Actually, that's not quite true. It was usually more about the methodology, envisioning how exactly I would dispatch my victims. I think of killing as an art form, you see, like sculpting a statue or painting a picture. Each victim may begin as a blank canvas, but once I have finished crafting, every murder is a masterpiece. Years ago, when I started creating my body of work, the pieces were poorly executed, more like bad finger paintings. I didn't much care for the results. But I continued to practice, undeterred, and the years passed, and I grew more skilled, and I even started having fun directing them. Murder became my entertainment. Killing people is invigorating! Believe me, I always get a proper night's sleep after a slaughter. As I was saying, I was contemplating this latest artwork of mine, relishing it while beating back a multitude of other pressing thoughts. Thoughts about how I had been raised right began bubbling to the surface. Thoughts about why murder is considered evil by religion began creeping out of the ooze. And yet my eyes were being drawn toward and were fixating on an old homeless drunkard lying further up the street. I was sorely tempted. He was an object, taking up unnecessary space. He clearly wasn't of any value to this world. The man was decrepit. It smelled like rotten cheese, even at such a distance. His putrid stench defiled my nose every time the wind whiffed toward me. Should I go for two in one night? Erasing this domestically challenged, malodorous nomad would be a favor to the city, to the world, and even to his shabby self. I stared at him a while longer. The sad geezer looked to be in serious emotional discomfort. His wrinkles showed that he was painfully lonely and world-weary. No one loved him anymore. Who even knew he existed? Honestly, why stay alive if no one cares that you exist? Perhaps a passerby or two had seen him this week and kicked dirt on him. Maybe one had even tossed him some leftovers. But sympathy like that is disgusting, really. It's just a hypocritical gesture we use to feel better about ourselves, for not actually caring at all. The way I look at it, this old man would be in a less cruel world and in a far, far better place if I were simply to tear his throat open and free him. I spent the next 5 minutes working myself up into an altruistic frame of mind. I planned my approach. Would I just go up to him, grab his head, and immediately hack it off? Or would I try to befriend him and talk to him nicely first and chat about his life before I changed the subject, before I let him know it was time to be stabbed, and that I'd only been pretending to care about him and his pathetic story? Or would I rough him up beforehand like a gang would, and then butcher him like a fresh cow into a pile of small chunks? I wasn't so sure which route I was going to take. I had so many choices. Finally, I settled on a kooky, improvisational approach to step up to the canvas and just start painting. I was about to cross the street to attempt this next masterpiece, a personal record, 2 murders in one night, when my step was interrupted by a hideous-looking wench sprawled on the ground before me. Time stood still in the second it took me to acknowledge her. And then suddenly all my attention refocused downward near my shoes. A little voice in my head began telling me to kill her again. But I knew from experience that the tiny voice was nothing more than an urge, and I was quite capable of controlling my urges. Wasn't I? I recognized her ruined face. What was her name? I had to think for a bit. Was it Emily? Rachel? No. It was Rose. Rose, of course, that's right. Her name was Rose. My favorite flower. Ah, Rose. Yes, she had been such an entertaining kill. I fondly recalled the running head start I had given her while counting to 10. That had been eminently fun. Stupid wench might have escaped, too, if she hadn't wasted 6 seconds refusing to believe me. I thank God she finally made the hunt interesting, quite exhilarating even for me. In fact, throwing those boxes and crates at me, throwing them in my way, pitching a wine bottle at my head. She nearly knocked my hat off. It was like a wonderful obstacle course. My favorite part of killing her was how her mascara-coated eyelashes fluttered those last few times. The eyelids always start out fluttering rapidly, as if trying to fan up a wind that will blow away the impending fate. Wasted effort, of course. The eyelids always slow down after a bit, until they finally give up. And they stop twitching altogether. And then they just stare like a sculpture. Or shut as if sleeping. Wow, I just completely lost my place. That moment was one of the most peaceful in the world. Knowing I have been able to bring such peace into the world always made me feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. See, this pleasurable masterpiece of mine, however, was going awry. The strange nagging sensation wouldn't fade away this time. Indeed, it kept getting stronger. I was horrified to realize I was developing a moral conscience. And its voice was beginning to consume my attention against my will. During the first few minutes of this miserable awareness, I felt scared and alone. I wanted to curl up and cry. I even thought about snuggling up to the carcass of Rose for comfort. That's when it hit me hard. I really had just killed this woman. How did that even happen? I began having trouble remembering the crime itself, although, of course, I imagine I had been involved. Yes. Undeniably so. There was still a bit of her blood on my hands. But as a meticulous artist, I have learned how to slice a neck without making a mess all over one's own clothes. I was still holding the butcher knife. Now, where did I get that from? All the details were dissolving into a smear of grey. I began to panic. I ran into a side alley, where I found a water pipe with which to clean myself. As the last of the blood splatter washed off my fingers and away from me, I came back to my normal senses. I felt relief. I told myself aloud over and over, "Everything is just dandy!" And once I had removed all evidence from the knife as well, I felt so much better. I was myself once more, happy. I was ready for a good night's sleep, and then return to my daily routines. I wiped the perspiration from my brow, stood up, sheathed the knife in my inside coat pocket, slipped my hands into my pants, and began to whistle my way back down toward the main street. Someone knows. Yes. Another job. Well done. The putrid old geezer. You just have to linger on in wretched misery until a future day, and the mood would strike again. I walked a few blocks while piping my merry tune, and then I began to feel sleepy. So I headed straight for home and the comforts of my bed.